more
Just,
info. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I ask a clarifying?
Sure.
So of the 95% on your slide 12, those who have new policies, so does that mean someone who previously has a home that hasn't been in the flood insurance program or is newly built will pay at a subsidized rate?
No. So what that means is new construction is built in compliance already. It's full risk rated.
You're up and out.
Okay. And
So they're not getting a subsidized rate. But
so when your chart on the various Delta counties, like San Joaquin County is 8,266 total policies. So that's existing policies.
correct. That's not total building stock because we don't have the record of the whole total
Right.
building stock.
So how's it work, Larry?
The problem that we have in just the Little Smith Canal area is, and I'm not sure exactly, but there is a large number of people who should have insurance that their banks or whatever should have imposed that are just kind of skating along there.
But if
Now, I'm not going to rat any of them out.
No, but if they come in, they got to come in at full price.
If they come in, they come in at full. Now, I have a question. Just, Pat, it's if you come in at the premium, it says 4 foot below base flood. What if you're 10 foot? What would that premium be?
Pretty expensive.
And this goes to the matter of the Smith Canal area, which Pat Johnson lives in and is happily paying that flood insurance.
But I'm well represented by Supervisor
That's
Mustaller. He's
The
gonna solve
problem,
this.
the problem you have is that the majority of those homes were built after World War II. They are modest homes. The house itself, excluding the land, is probably not 95. But down in the deeper part of it, you are 10 feet below. And that is probably a $25,000 or $30,000 premium. So in effect, you're saying actuarially, this house will be totally destroyed every 4 or 5 years. Now, I'm not going to point out that this area has been there since and protected by the levees that unfortunately everybody built all over, and that's why they're not approved. But they're still there, and it's at a dead-end canal that doesn't have water in it, really. So the bottom line is this. This is not affordable. For the majority of those people, if some of those, and I know we've had people just throw the keys on the front porch and walk away because they can't afford the premiums. The more insidious thing is, because of the building restrictions, you cannot rebuild if there's a fire. And we have about 10 vacant lots that the folks in Washington out at Crystal City told me that the best thing I could do was turn them into pocket parks or turn them into where the other neighbors could buy them or use them to grow vegetables. Somebody in your organization also told me to move my city, but I explained to him that would be slightly difficult. The problem is I do not dispute at all that we need flood insurance, and if you live in a flood-prone area, you should buy flood insurance. I'm saying that the pendulum swung from where we didn't charge anybody and you guys got screwed out of billions of dollars. It swung all the way over to this side now where we're trying to make it all up in a very short period of time on the backs of the majority of folks that can't afford to do it. And so what we're doing is we've legislated blight into this particular area because the only people that will be able to afford to buy those houses, because if I live across the street and I'm out of the floodplain, but you're in it, your house is worth half of what my house is worth or less because of the flood insurance and the rebuilding issues. The problem is what we have slumlords coming in and buying these houses up cheap, and if you buy them for cash, you do not have to have flood insurance, which means that you do not put a dime into them. You just rent them out, and all of a sudden the neighborhood goes to the devil. So I am not yelling at you folks because I've already yelled at all the folks in Washington usually 2 or 3 times a year. I should get an apartment in Crystal City. But the bottom line is we need to really, for instance, oh, I forgot. These people that live in this area have already 218 election to fix the problem, which will basically take them out of the 100-year flood. It's going to take us 5 years. But they have 2 or 3 assessments to do that, depending on where they live and how deep they are and all. Plus, now they have the flood insurance. These are modest people. They cannot afford to fix their problem and pay the insurance and eat. And so these are the hard questions that we've taken to Washington. And to be quite honest with you, we've got a little bit of relief in the fact that you all, through your organization in Washington, have said, we will go as slow as we can to allow you to fix this particular issue. But we cannot continue to subsidize you. I understand that. It's just, it's awful hard to go back and talk to somebody who's losing their house that they've lived in for, 30 years and say, hey, I'm really sorry, but you're screwed. So when we see these issues of, well, it's only 10% or it's only 5%, the problem is, in our particular instance, if you're one of those 5%, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. And out in the Delta, that's why, it looks like that each one of these counties looks like it doesn't have that much. The problem is that's because the 100% of those people are all in the Delta, or a big chunk of them are. And that's the other issue, is that these are small Delta towns, whether it's Clarksburg, Hood, Walnut Grove. These folks, if they have to do that, you are literally going to just, these towns will become ghost towns. They will become just kind of frozen in amber. You will have no economic development. No one will put a nickel into a business there or a home or anything else. And so you've just again kind of legislated these folks' doom.
It's a difficult situation, and frankly, I don't envy Congress. I work disasters all over the country. That's all I've done for 25 years, and so I've been out to these disasters, and it's equally difficult when people come in to the disaster centers and they don't have insurance, whether it's flood insurance, fire insurance, whatever it is. But most recently with Superstorm Sandy, I was back there for over a month or more. And, it's difficult because you're right. We have to make the flood insurance premiums affordable so people can protect themselves. I mean, that's the whole premise as a method of mitigation. But you also don't want to see them go without any coverage, because then what happens is the federal disaster assistance, a lot of forms of federal disaster assistance that you and I would go after is not available unless it's a federally declared disaster. So that means that property owner or business owner, they're on their own to figure out how they're going to repair that building. And that's not fun unless you have a money tree in your backyard that you can pull money off of, or you have a rich relative. The same thing goes in a federally declared disaster. Thank goodness that we have it. But when they go to apply for disaster assistance, they can get, emergency housing and some type of immediate emergency programs. But most people fall into having to get Small Business Administration loans. That is a loan. That's not free money. So that means what they walk out of, and thank goodness we have some recovery methods for them in a federally declared disaster, but now they have a house they can't live in that they still have to pay a mortgage on. They have to qualify to get an SBA loan, low interest or not, it's a loan. Now I have to pay the loan back, and I also have to pay a third bill because now I have to pay for a rental property to put my house in. That is not a good situation. So over and over and over in the 25 years that I've been doing this, I see this constantly. And of course, it's always, everybody thinks it's not going to flood. But as the chairman pointed out, It did flood here. We had a levee break in the middle of June on a clear blue, perfectly gorgeous day.
Nobody lived on that island.
Well,
You're okay there.
well, it happens, right? Because we can't predict Mother Nature, which is the problem. So with respect to Smith Canal, remember that we have not taken away the discounted policies that property owners can use when they have been newly mapped into a floodplain. So the preferred risk policy eligibility extension is still out there. It is not a full risk-based policy. So the people in the Smith Canal area qualify for that policy. It's about $489 a year for the maximum amount of coverage. So it's not full risk, it's not unaffordable, and it's certainly an option that they should be considering because they live behind a levee. And there is risk, whether the levee's 100% or not. It doesn't matter. That levee can break and they can flood. And then the alternative is far worse for them if they don't have the insurance. So
I'm not in disagreement there.
yeah, but I mean,
I'm
it's
just saying
it's
there
a
are-
dilemma for sure.
I could be misquoting Congresswoman Waters, but I think she said something to the fact, well, I didn't know that was in there, and she had her name on the bill. So, I mean, there are some interesting bills that get passed.
Well, and your concerns are well heard. Congress, in fact, has been in session last week and this week, and I'm sure you've read that in the media, looking at modifications to the Biggert waters. Not much we can say beyond that because we know as much as you know what we read in the newspaper. But I think it's clear that they recognize the affordability issue, and that's something that they are definitely looking at.
Our message
So-
was we have no problem with everyone should be covered and everyone should be protected, and eventually everybody should be paying an actuarial rate. We think some of the actuarial rates are wrong. We think that, you know, if you spring something on somebody, it's a good idea to give them a few years to ramp up to it and not just pound them into the ground. And there's no question that if some idiot is living along the Mississippi, we'll say, and every year he floods and every year he says something stupid to the newspaper or something that I'm going to rebuild, well, that's just insane and shouldn't be, obviously we shouldn't be subsidizing that. But for, you know, communities that basically are standing up as we did in '97 when FEMA came to town the first time, and I was involved with that particular deal, that worked. We proved it. We built a flood control project in 3.5 years, and when we went back to Washington and told them we'd built it in 3.5 years, the Army Corps said, "Did you finish the feasibility study?" We said, "No, we just built the project, and your people okayed it all." They made us take 3.5 more years to finish the feasibility study on a project we'd already built. Now, some of that is like crazy.
Yep. Agree.
So I'm just saying that for people that stand up and say, we will take care of it, and then actually have a history of taking care of it and fix it, government should be supportive. And what happens is unfortunately, there's a degree of 30 degrees of separation, I think, sometimes between the local and the federal government into what is actually happening on the locals. And I know that that's taking place throughout, you know, the region. People are aware of what's going on flood-wise. They got the wake-up call. I'll shut up, Randy.
Well, we've covered the issue of flood insurance pretty thoroughly. We touched just gently on the fact that we're operating without an MOU and potentially what the consequences of that are. And we haven't heard from the Army Corps of Engineers. Would you care to weigh in and offer any thoughts about either of those issues or additional issues?
Sure. Well, I would just